Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to Bhagavad-gita Satsang. I'm Hari-kirtana. It is a pleasure for me to be here with you, an honor to have you here with me. Thank you so much for choosing to spend part of your evening with me discussing topics of Bhagavad-gita. And on the assumption that I should not take anything for granted, if those of you who are currently here would kindly let me know that you can hear me by raising your hand. You'll see a little raise hand icon on the bottom. Thank you very much for confirming that I can be heard. Let us take care of a little bit of housekeeping. All right. So for those of you who are new to the satsang, you can adjust your audio settings and your viewing options in the right-hand corner of your screen, I believe, but somewhere you should have some controls for that sort of thing. You need not worry about your microphone or your video camera, because while you can see and hear me, I cannot see or hear you. But if you would like to make yourself heard, you can type a question into the Q&A box, or I also have the chat window open. So any comments you'd like to make in the chat and share with others who are here with you, that would also be very, very nice. And with that, let's take a quick look at our last class together. Chapter 11, the Yoga of Divine Revelation. We spoke about how you can see everything everywhere all in one place in this universal form that Krishna has revealed to Arjuna. We spoke about astonishment as a rasa, or a mood of relationship. And certainly what can be more astonishing than to actually see how the Supreme Being becomes and enters into this entire universe. Pretty mind-blowing thing, and therefore certainly astonishing. And Arjuna begins his prayers, and as we move through this chapter, we're going to get a little deeper into this subject, because right now, Arjuna has begun actually more of the preamble to his prayers. And we're going to speak, as we move through the later verses of this chapter, about the position or role of prayer in one's yoga practice. So that will be one of the things you can look forward to just a little down the way from where we are now. We covered verses 13 through 19 last time. Tonight, we continue with Arjuna's preamble, which is really more of a report of what he's seeing, echoing back to Krishna what Krishna has revealed to him. And what Arjuna sees is starting to get really freaky, not as if it wasn't already completely mind-blowing, but here comes the scary part of the universal form. Krishna is beginning to reveal what is essentially the dark side of God. In order for the Supreme Person or the Supreme Being to be complete, there must be a dark side somewhere. Now, Arjuna is going to get to see it. We'll speak a little bit about fear of God as a lesser modality of worship, or to put it another way, in a less religious context, a lesser modality of relationship between the individual self and the universal self, and therefore make a distinction between bhakti yoga and some aspects of religious experience. At the end, we will see that death arrives as part of this universe. We'll cover verses 20 through 25. But before we get to our verses, we will call and response chant our invocation mantra. So a quick note on the diacritical marks in the Sanskrit. This is transliterated Sanskrit, Sanskrit in the Roman alphabet with marks that indicate cues for pronunciation. The dot over the M indicates that we bring the back of our tongue up to the back of the roof of our mouth at the same time that we bring our lips together in front. The bar across any vowel, in this case an A, indicates a long open version of the vowel as opposed to a short and slightly more contained version of the vowel, as I hope will be illustrated as I chant this invocation mantra and then give you time to chant it back. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The translation: I offer my respects to the Supreme Person, the Son of Vasudeva, who is the all-pervading transcendence. So Vasudeva is a patronymic indicating the son of Vasudeva. And in this case, the son of Vasudeva is Krishna. So this is both a Vishnu mantra, the all-pervading transcendence, and a Krishna mantra used in that context when we are studying yoga wisdom texts that are either spoken by or spoken about Krishna. In this case, Bhagavad-gita is spoken by Krishna. So this particular chapter, I've been calling it the Yoga of Divine Revelation. We've been speaking about it in terms of theophany, the revelation of the Supreme Person or the manifestation of the Supreme Person in a form that is visible to a human being. So another way to say this is Vishwarupa Darshana. So Vishwa, the universe, Rupa, form, Darshan, seeing, yoga, union, or union through the vision of the universal form of the Supreme Person. So it's just another way to characterize this particular chapter and why it is called the vision of the universal form. And last week we took a look at a traditional rendering of this universal form. So this illustration gives a sense of what Arjuna is seeing, according to his own description, in the verses that we are studying now in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita. Brahma sitting on the lotus flower, all of the demigods, Ananta Shesh, an expansion of Lord Vishnu, all manner of faces facing in every direction, breathing fire, unlimited arms with upraised weapons, filling. So Arjuna will now describe further how this universal form is completely filling the space in the entire universe. So we left off with the 19th verse, which translates as, "You have no beginning, no middle, nor any end. Your power is limitless. Your arms are limitless. And the sun and the moon are your eyes. I see you with blazing fire pouring forth from your mouth, burning this entire universe with the heat of your radiance." And the question was asked, well, is this a literal description? is the universal form of the Supreme Person actually burning the whole universe? And in one sense, the answer is literally yes. And as we move through this description of the universal form, Krishna will describe or explain how that is so. So we'll go through the translation of each of the verses that we will cover this evening, and then go back and look at them in detail, as is our usual manner of proceeding. So Arjuna will continue, picking up now in verse number 20, chapter 11. O great self, you alone fill the space between heaven and earth. In all directions, the three worlds tremble at the sight of your fierce and wonderful form. Verse 21. The assembled multitudes of celestial beings are entering into you, some stricken with fear and offering prayers with folded hands. Hosts of great sages and perfected beings are crying out to you by singing hymns of praise and petitions for peace and prosperity. Verse 22. All the various manifestations of Lord Shiva, the 12 principal demigods, the Vasus, the Sadhyas, the Vishvadevas, the 2 Ashvis, the Maruts, the forefathers, angels, spirits, demons, and the perfected beings are all beholding you with complete amazement. Verse 23. O mighty armed one, seeing your exalted form, with its innumerable faces, eyes, arms, thighs, legs, and bellies, and your many terrible teeth, the entire universe trembles in fear, as do I. Verse 24. O all-pervading Vishnu, seeing you touching the sky with your endless array of electrifying colors, your gaping mouths, and huge glowing eyes, my inner self trembles. My reeling mind can find neither stability nor serenity. Verse 25. Seeing your mouths with their terrible teeth and your deathly faces bellowing searing fires of cosmic devastation, I have lost all sense of direction and can find no place of shelter. O Lord of Lords, abode of the universe, please be merciful to me. So quite a vision that Arjuna is experiencing. It is interesting that there is not a great deal of commentary to be found on these verses when you look at the traditional commentators and what they have to say. Things get a little thin in this section. The various editions of the Gita, both online and in print, as a general rule, don't have a lot more to say on these verses, although we will look into the word for word and find some things hiding, some nice jewels hiding in these verses. But Arjuna's report is, unlike the Muller report, pretty self-explanatory. It speaks for itself. So let's now get into these verses in detail. And the first verse is the one that we are going to chant together. So once again, this will be call and response chanting. And a few additional notes on the transliterated Sanskrit. The accent mark over an S indicates a deep SH sound that comes from the back of one's mouth, as opposed to a regular SH sound towards the front of one's mouth, sh, at least for those of us for whom English is a first language. A C always makes a CH sound. If you want a K sound, you get a K. If you want an S sound, you get an S. The C is always cha. The dot under the H at the end of a word at the end of the line indicates that a short version of the vowel that precedes that H will be echoed back, as in the last word of the second line. A dot under a vowel, in the case of an R, indicates that it's not actually, under a consonant. In the case of an R, turns it into a vowel, so it gives it a ri sound. So it's not a sound. There's no front teeth, top teeth over your front lower lip, but rather a single flicking of your tongue against the center of the roof of your mouth. A dot under an S indicates a regular SH sound, kind of like white noise. A dot under a T also indicates that rather than putting your tongue right behind your teeth, you're going to pull your tongue back into the center of the roof of your mouth. So ta instead of ta. Subtle difference. And that's all, folks. Everything else is the same as in our invocation mantra. So I'll chant one line at a time. You will please chant back with me. Yava prittivyor idam antaram hi Yaptam tvayaikena dishashcha sarvaha Drishvad buddham rupam ugram tavedam Lokatrayam pravyatya Lokatrayam pravyatitam mahatman All right, one more time. I chant, you chant back. Yava pritivyoridam antaram hi Yaptam tvayaikena dishashcha sarvaha Drishtvad bhutam rupam ugram tavedam Lokatrayam pravyatitam mahatman So one more thing that I could have and perhaps should have pointed out, there is no the sound in Sanskrit. A T followed by an H means that you put some air after the T. So in the case of the middle word of the last line, pravyatitam, it's not pravyathitam, but pravyatitam. So just some air after the T. That's going to be true with an H anywhere you pronounce each letter in transliterated Sanskrit. So if the letter is there, then you pronounce it. The translation once again, O great self, you alone fill the space between heaven and earth in all directions. The three worlds tremble at the sight of your fierce and wonderful form. So let's take a close look at this verse. So we'll begin at the end. Not once again, oh, I'm sorry, I should have noticed that earlier. Can you adjust the screen from seeing your desktop? I'm not really sure. Oh, we had this problem last time, and I certainly wish that I remembered how I fixed it. Nia, thank you once again for letting me know that not everyone is actually seeing what I thought they would be seeing. So let me hit share. I'm going to share my PowerPoint once again. Okay, so now I'm going to ask, is everyone seeing me in a window up in the corner and the verse that I am looking at in the PowerPoint? Yes, the problem from last time, you had to zoom into the words. So what should, I hope, be happening is that my PowerPoint application is filling your screen same as it is filling my screen. So would you please let me know if, in fact, this slide is not filling your screen and you are seeing, say, something else? Okay, so Nia, it's not filling your screen. Anyone else? Yes, but still see desktop? Well, you shouldn't see all the slides on the left. You should only be seeing the one slide. Thank you, Jill. Well, let's just see. All right, so now you're all seeing my Apple Wave and all the junk I've got lying around on my desktop. Is that a fact, or are you still seeing? Oh, it seems my sharing is paused. Let's try this again. All right, so now we should be back. No, just see the current slide. Okay, because that paused. All right. I'm not sure, Nia, why your screen is not filled. It's clearer. Okay, well, that's good news. All right. Hopefully, this will not continue to be a problem, but I will look into this. So thank you for bringing this to my attention. And I will look into this as a technical issue, as I am, once again, utilizing a slightly different system than I have used in prior weeks, and therefore some of the technical bugs may not have quite been worked out. So I will let you know. It's not totally a big deal. We can still see the whole slide. Okay, Jess, thank you. As long as you can see the whole slide, my hope is that my PowerPoint presentation, my PowerPoint application is actually filling your screen the same way it's filling mine, as I use a second monitor to look at my notes. Okay, very good. Thank you all very much. So now let's get back to our topic at hand, which is this verse. So oftentimes the syntax of Sanskrit grammar is inverse from English grammar. So the last word of this verse is Mahatman. Maha, great, Atma, soul. So Mahatman means great soul or great self. Atma also means self. So the words Mahatma, or Maha-Atman in this case, denotes that the supreme person is the greatest of all Atmas or selves. Or understood in another way, all souls or all selves are part of the one supreme self, which is to say that the supreme self is greater than the sum of the parts. Each one of us is a unique individual, and yet we are all parts of one complete reality. And that one complete reality is the sum and substance of all the parts, and yet is also more than the sum of the parts, because the supreme personality has his own personality that is greater than the sum of the parts. So we begin with this idea that the Maha-Atman is that one person who is the sum and substance of all selves, and yet is greater than the sum of the parts. Diao indicates outer space, or another way to think about this is from heaven and earth. So between the earth and heaven, all that space is taken up by this form. So the Vaishnava commentators on this verse point out that the earth is equated to one's mother, Mother Earth, and the heavens are equated to the Father, the Supreme Person. So the earth provides us with these bodies. Our material bodies are made of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, subtle elements of mind, intelligence, and ego. And this form that Krishna is displaying to Arjuna fills all the space between heaven and earth, includes heaven and earth. So another way to think about it is that this space between heaven and earth indicates that the universal form consumes all of the upper and lower planetary systems. So in Vedic philosophy, the universe is divided into three general sections: upper planetary systems, middle planetary systems, lower planetary systems. So once again, the rule of threes appears. And the universe is also considered to be multidimensional, which agrees entirely with a modern conception of the physical universe, that we only see a small portion of the universe. And there are many more dimensions to the universe that fall beyond the bandwidth of our senses. So all the space and all of space in all directions is taken up by this divine form. So Krishna could be seen as all-pervading, therefore, indefinitely expanding into all possible space in the material or in the universe. The three planetary systems are also distinguished by consciousness. So this is an interesting idea, that living beings are grouped together in accordance with their consciousness. And this is natural. You know, we see people naturally gravitate towards other people of similar consciousness. So this takes place on a local level. This also takes place on a cosmic level. So the three planetary systems are distinguished by being inhabited by very elevated and compassionate beings, inimical beings whose consciousness is more degraded, and then neutral beings, middle beings. So upper, compassionate beings; lower, inimical beings; middle, neutral beings. So this is also another way to think of how the universal form is spread out amongst all different societies of people, all different kinds of categories of beings spread throughout the entire universe. And as we will see, every one of these beings will have a very different experience of the universal form, because up until now, Krishna has said, I'm just going to show this to you, Arjuna, and no one's ever seen it before. This is all new news. And it appears, based on what we're about to hear from Arjuna and from the commentators on these verses, that not only has Krishna given Sanjaya, the secretary to the blind king Dhritarashtra, who is narrating the events on the battlefield of Kurukshetra to the king as he has seen them unfold. So Sanjaya can see what Arjuna sees and can describe it to the king and by extension to us. But we're also going to find that the various inhabitants of planetary systems will also be getting a view of this universal form. And they're going to react in different ways. So the universal form is amazing. It's phenomenal. It's wonderful. It's awe-inspiring, but it's also terrifying. And therefore, we will see how people react in a way that you might expect by seeing the awesome power of the Supreme Person. People are going to start to get a little panicky. So here we go. This is now our next verse, verse 21. The assembled multitudes of celestial beings are entering into you, some stricken with fear and offering prayers with folded hands. Hosts of great sages and perfected beings are crying out to you by singing hymns of praise and petitions for peace and prosperity. So this is where Krishna is starting to freak everyone out. In this verse, we hear about two groups of people, Sura, Sangha. So Sangha means gathering or group, and Sura means celestial beings or demigods, basically, the higher denizens of the higher planetary systems that are considered beneficent. And then Siddha Sangha means perfect beings. So the demigods are offering prayers, and the perfected beings are singing hymns of praise. So now we have two different moods, but we also see that some are stricken with fear, afraid, seeing the universal form from a position of fear. So I took a look at specifically at the commentary of Ramanuja, one of the founders of one of the four Vaishnava lineages. And I'm going to share that commentary with you and then speak a little bit about that, because this illuminates some of these different reactions from different classes of people. So Ramanuja tells us that the demigods are exclusively influenced by the nature of goodness, in Sanskrit, sattva guna. And therefore they rejoice upon seeing this divine universal form, the Vishvarupa, and are inspired with awe, and they're enraptured by the amazing form. So for someone who is a devotee of the Supreme Person, they see this form and they think, wow, this is just mind-blowing and amazing. Ramanuja continues, some among them were frightened by the terrifying aspect of the Vishvarupa, which was also wonderful, and therefore they bowed down to it with folded hands, offering eulogies of praise and prayers of supplication, each according to their perceptions. So this is an interesting idea. Remember earlier we spoke about how you can see whatever you want to see in this universe and in this universal form. So the indication here is that all these different classes of demigods and other beings are seeing the same universal form, but seeing different aspects of it according to their own orientation. Remember, far earlier in the Bhagavad-gita, Krishna said that however one approaches him, he reciprocates in precisely that way. Everyone has a different relationship with the Supreme Being. There are unlimited number of atmas or selves, therefore there are unlimited possibilities of relationship. And Krishna is the one person who has the unlimited capacity to engage in unlimited relationships. So everyone who is seeing the universal form, not seeing it or feeling it quite the same way. So Ramanuja continues, other great souls, such as the perfected beings or siddhas, who have realized the higher and lower truths, utter the benediction svastiti, which means may there be all auspiciousness. So singing hymns of praise and petitions for peace and prosperity, that's what this is referring to. The Maharishis, the great seers, liberated sages, upon seeing the Vishvarupa form, the universal form, loudly resound the words Jai, Jai, meaning all glory, kind of like hip, hip, hooray, and spontaneously compose wonderful Sanskrit hymns in glorification of this universal form, while singing as a community, as a group, engaging in congregational chanting of the names and forms and qualities and activities of the Supreme Person in conjunction with the revelation of this form. So as we move on to the next verse, we will also see a description of a variety of beings who are responding to the vision of the universal form. So here we go. This is now text 22. All the various manifestations of Lord Shiva, in other words, the Rudras, the 12 principal demigods, the Vasus, the Sadhyas, the Vishradevas, the 2 Ashvis, the Maruts. So all of these descriptions we've spoken about in the previous verses, and actually in the previous chapter. We got a description of them, and then Krishna, before revealing the universal form, gave us a little foreshadowing. This is what you're going to see. And so he mentions the Rudras, the manifestations of Lord Shiva, the Adityas, the 12 principal demigods, then the Vasus, Sadhyas, Vishvadevas, 2 Ashvis, various groups of benevolent higher planetary system personalities. And then he'll cover other aspects of the 3 planetary systems. The forefathers, angels, spirits, demons, and the perfected beings are all beholding you with complete amazement. So the angels are Gandharvas. So Gandharvas in Vedic understanding are the equivalent of what we know in the West as angels. They are very powerful. They are very musical. They play beautiful music. They are expert singers, and they sing songs and play music in glorification of the Supreme Person. So Gandharvas, Vedic equivalent of angels. Spirits are yakshas. That's a different category of being in the dimensions of the universe we don't have access to. demons, asuras, lower planetary systems, inimical beings, and the perfected beings, self-realized sages, all beholding the Supreme Person in this universal form with complete amazement. So what Arjuna is seeing is all of these different kinds of beings within the universal form, seeing the universal form and responding to it in these different ways. So there's all kinds of layers of psychedelia going on in terms of what Arjuna is seeing and what he is seeing others seeing within the vision he himself sees. There's innumerable dimensions to this phenomenal universal form. Which brings us to the next verse, 23. And now, if you have any questions about what I'm covering so far, please go ahead and pop it in the Q&A box. If you have a comment, toss it in the chat to share with everyone. The next verse, O mighty armed one, seeing your exalted form with its innumerable faces, eyes, arms, thighs, legs, and bellies, and your many terrible teeth, the entire universe trembles in fear, as do I. So Arjuna is also starting to lose it here. He's starting to become afraid. And this is where we see fear of God as a further step down, as a lesser modality of relationship. So previously, Krishna was present before Arjuna in his human-like form, 2 arms, dark complexion, just one head, no fire coming out of his mouth. His familiar, friendly, beautiful form. And that form is actually higher than the form that Krishna has revealed to Arjuna upon Arjuna's request. And Arjuna has first stepped back from his intimate relationship of friendship with the Supreme Person, which kind of puts the whole Supreme Person-ness of the person aside in favor of fraternal affection. And now he's seeing how Krishna is the Supreme Person and the power and majesty of the Supreme Person, and he's stepped back then into awe and reverence. And then now taking a further step back into fear of the power of God. I say stepping back because there's more distance. You naturally have more distance between yourself and someone you're afraid of than the distance you put between yourself and someone you trust or someone you love. And the universal form isn't really like the lovable part of the Supreme Being. It's the really scary part of the Supreme Being. And Krishna shows it to Arjuna only because Arjuna said he wanted to see it. Now, Arjuna's starting point is from a position of pure devotion and love of Krishna. And while Arjuna is our role model, we are not starting, at least most of us are not starting from that position. We are approaching the Supreme Person from a distance. And one of the first things we notice as we approach the Supreme Person is the power of the Supreme Person. And in Western religion, in some Western religions, we are encouraged to be fearful of God. That's a good first step because it's just an acknowledgement of reality. We are very, very small. The universe is very, very big. And the source of the universe is much, much bigger. So, for someone who has yet to establish a relationship of friendship with the Supreme Person, you might first have to go through the stage of fear of the Supreme Person, which, when one passes through, delivers one into amazement at the majesty of the Supreme Person, which one then, by cultivation of devotion, can take one a step further into any number of other kinds of more intimate relationships with that Supreme Person. And it's important to know the potential for the relationship, because if we think that the only relationship we can have with the Supreme Being is this relationship of fear, is that the only aspect of the Supreme Person that there is to have a relationship with is the angry, jealous, geriatric vision of God, as opposed to the unconditionally loving, beautiful aspect of God, the generous aspect of God, the aspect that has no jealousy of anyone or anything. If we know that that person is there to have a relationship with, that makes it a lot easier to move forward through the element of fear, the experience of awe and reverence, into that deeper relationship. Whereas if we don't think there's any other aspect of the Supreme Person, we might want to run and hide from this all-powerful, fearsome Supreme Being. So in this chapter, Krishna is going to take us full circle from his original beautiful form into the form of power and majesty, through the form of fear, of death, and then back to majesty and then intimate relationship. So in order to get there, let us continue. Verse 24, O all-pervading Vishnu, seeing you touching the sky with your endless array of electrifying colors, your gaping mouths and huge glowing eyes, my inner self trembles. My reeling mind can find neither stability nor serenity. So this vision really blows Arjuna off his rocker. Interesting to me to hear how Arjuna is saying that he is neither able to sit comfortably or peacefully. And Krishna has described previously that for someone practicing yoga, that equanimity and serenity just kind of goes with the territory. So it's almost as if this vision of the universal form that is transforming into a vision of horror is almost designed to blow someone off their yoga. All right, let's take a moment to get a question. Shana, do you think that this trajectory, fear to amazement, devotion to intimacy, at all mirrors or could mirror human relationships? That's a really good question. Yes. Let's take just a very general and positive sense of relationship of child to parent. So in the beginning, there is extraordinary intimacy between an infant and its mother. Father can get into the acts, but not in quite the same intimate way as a child's mother. And there's nothing but love and trust and deep, deep love and intimacy. Then, okay, I can go with that in just a second. I see your follow-up question. So I'll finish this example and then I'll come to the question you are asking. Then parents to a little child are like super people. They can do anything. Therefore, you're amazed at all the things that your parents can do. Then if it occurs to you that behaving well is an option, not mandatory, but your parents are still in a position where they can punish you for behavior they don't like, well, now you have to fear your parents. And later on, maybe it'll come back full circle where you're amazed at what they did to raise you, the sacrifices they made. You know, you don't really appreciate these kind of things when you're younger. And then in your later years, hopefully, intimacy happens, but on a different level, a different kind of intimacy. All right, now, there was a follow-up here. I was thinking about falling in love. Like it's scary at first, then it's amazing, and then it can evolve into deep intimacy. No, that's not a reach. Maybe this is a reach, or maybe not. No, because the relationships that we have here in the material world with one another are reflections of the potential for spiritual relationships between ourselves and the Supreme Person. We can learn about the Supreme Person by studying ourselves because we're little microscopic samples of the Supreme Person. And we can learn about the potential for our relationship with the Supreme Person by looking at our own experience of relationships. So yes, when you fall in love with someone and it's like dizzying and a little scary, and you don't even know if you really want to let your heart go there. And then it's amazing that you let your heart go there and you can go to that place and you feel the reciprocation of the person that you are falling in love with. And as that reciprocation evolves, the level of intimacy deepens. And then you feel an extraordinary connection to this person. So yes, that same kind of progression that we see in relationships in the material world, this is a reflection of the progression of relationship we can have with the Supreme Person. That's where I was going with this. Like true holy love can be like love of God, and likewise true intimacy with God can be, it can be not like being in love, it can be being in love. So yes, it can be like the experience of love we have in the material world, and it is love on a whole other level. That is to say, just as Ishvara is Purusha Vishesha, categorically different kind of person, love of Ishvara, love of the Supreme Person, is a categorically different kind of love. And what we experience here in the material world is a kind of reflection of that original spiritual love that is now latent in all beings in the material world who have yet to reawaken that natural relationship of love with the Supreme Being. So thank you so much for such a nice question. All right, so let's talk just briefly about this verse. So the Sanskrit word for touching the sky, seeing here, Arjuna has said, seeing you, O all-pervading Vishnu, touching the sky with your endless array of electrifying colors. So that translates, touching the sky translates the words nabhaspirasham. And once again, Ramanuja offers us a little commentary here. The words nabha means the firmament, the heavens, and is in reference to the Paramavyoma. So this is a supreme region beyond even the heavens and the celestial spheres rather. The celestial realms are subject to prakriti or matter. They're still part of the material world, and therefore are affected by the three qualities of material nature. But the Paramavyoma is that region that is kind of like the penthouse of heaven. So beyond the firmament, so to speak. So that it's an indication that the universal form is infinite, not constrained to the material world, while still being a manifestation of the material universe. As Ramanuja puts it, the divine universal form is infinite and the shelter of all the modifications, that is to say, the changes of the three qualities of material nature that are found within the physical existence of this material universe. So it's kind of a amplification of the universal form as being infinite or beyond, not constrained to the material world. Okay. And then our last verse for this evening. Seeing your mouths with their terrible teeth and your deathly faces, bellowing, searing fires of cosmic devastation, I have lost all sense of direction and can find no place of shelter. O Lord of Lords, abode of the universe, please be merciful to me. So Krishna is starting, Arjuna rather, is starting to see how this universal form is actually the form of death. And what he sees next is going to be really like super scary. We're going into even scarier, darker side of the Supreme Person in the verses that follow. And he's basically saying he wants this roller coaster ride to finish. And for Krishna to just give some explanation and then go back to the form that he knows and loves. So this is a transition verse where we will start to see a description of the future, what's to come. So, any last questions on these verses? And I'm going to stop my share for a moment, and then I'm going to share again, and I'm going to do a little experiment. All right. And going back to our technical issue, I would like to just quickly ask you to tell me if anything looks different on the screen than before when I shared my screen previously. And while I wait anxiously for you to tell me, I will give a little same. Okay, very good. Thank you. So here's our recap for tonight, chapter 11, the Yoga of Divine Revelation, or Vishvarupa Dharshana. Krishna is starting to freak everyone out. Everyone's starting to flip out. It's too much. It's all too much for me to take. We spoke about fear of God as a lesser modality of relationship or worship, and how that affects. Oh, so much better. Clear. Okay, good. Good to know. How fear of God is a step back from intimate relationship, and we explored a little bit about how you move through these different modes of relationships, or how you can move through them. And now in this verse, Krishna in the form of death has arrived. So we covered verses 20 through 25. Any last questions? Last call for questions. What you got? I am anxious to hear anything that you may be wondering about in relationship to these verses. And if you are watching this after the fact, or if any of you here with me now, think of a question that you would like to ask. You can write to me, Hari, at Hari-kirtana.com. I will be very, very happy to hear from you any time. Next week, spoiler alert, Krishna is going to reveal the outcome of the Battle of Kurukshetra. And we will look at fear of God as impetus for spiritual curiosity. That is to say, rather than giving us impetus to go run away and hide from this very scary person, we can see fear of God as a reason to be curious about this fearsome person. We will cover verses 26 through 31 of this chapter. And that takes us to the end of this portion. We have one question. What did I call the beings of the lower planetary systems? So these are known as yakshas and asuras, sometimes also called rakshasas. So sura means demigod or angelic person, saintly agents, empowered agents of the Supreme Person whose mission is aligned with divinity. And asura, remember the A or the sound can be a negating prefix. So sura, demigod, asura, not a demigod, or the opposite of a demigod, a demon, someone who is inimical to the path of righteousness or saintliness, is another way to put it. Yakshas and rakshasas are spirit beings like ghosts, and different categories of beings on lower planetary systems. So I hope that answers your question, Jill. Thank you for asking and for being here this evening. We're already a few minutes over, so if you have any other questions, please post them in the Facebook group. I'm anxious to spend a little more time with you there. And so I'm going to try and do that. So I will try to post something tomorrow. All right. Yes, interesting. The sages were not afraid, but Arjuna was curious. So let's see in the next few verses if Arjuna has reasons to be even more afraid or more curious. That is all. Thank you so very, very much for spending your time with me. It is, of course, it is always an honor to have you here with me, and a pleasure for me to be here with you. Quick last, not really a question. Yeah. All right. Well, a note of appreciation from Shivani. Thank you so very much. And back at you. I am very, very appreciative of your work as well. All right, everyone, have a nice night, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a nice night.